Hey there, folks. Welcome back for the third episode of Writeous Incarnation. I had intended to do so much writing that I could do one of these videos pretty much whenever I wanted to, whenever the mood struck me, whenever I had a moment of inspiration. But unfortunately, this is actually coming after only the third writing session I've had. As you know, I made an agreement with myself that I would not do a video until I'd written at least an hour. And unfortunately, I've now written for a total of 3 hours. A little bit more than 3 hours, but not enough more over that to pat myself on the back. I was out on travel for work last week, which is an excuse, but it's not a reason, because I could have found time to do it. I definitely had an hour each day where I could have written, and I chose not to. I still don't know why, in my mind, what it is psychologically that makes this such a repulsive endeavor for me. I really don't understand it at this point. I will say, though, and this kind of leads into the first topic I wanted to talk about, which is research. I do know that part of my reluctance was that I have reached a point where I no longer have experience that I can in any way reasonably bring to bear on what I need to write. And essentially, if you see in the picture, you know that the main character she has mechanical legs. She has artificial legs. And in the story, this isn't spoiling too much because you find out in the first few minutes, first page or so, she is paralyzed from the waist down. So she does have legs, but she's paralyzed. And I don't know anybody who has lived like that. I don't know how it works mechanically. So every single moment I'm having to do research and look up, like, how do people in a wheelchair, how do they use the sink? And it's like, oh, there's a wheelchair accessible sink that, is kind of open at the bottom and they can wheel themselves under it. And so, but just like every single step I've got to research. I've got to research what the name of the places where your legs go. And leg rests, duh. But like, I was like, are they like supports? Are they flaps? Like, what are they called? Like, you just realize how very few terms are circulating in your mind about any particular topic or any particular device when you don't use it all that often. I knew there were wheels and there was essentially a chair with a backrest and it's not even a cushion, but a place where you sit. So just on a very fundamental level, not knowing anything about it, how to get around or anything. So I will say right off the jump, if you or anybody you know is in a wheelchair, has been confined to a wheelchair, I wouldn't say ideally as in terms of, I would be happy about it, but in order to sync up enough that, with the story is that, it is based on paralysis of they have the legs, but they can't use them. If you have any of those, or if you are that person, please let me know, because I would love to do an interview to find out. I want it to be, like I said, my writing is strongest when it is has a core in reality. And that doesn't mean it's awesome. It just means that's when I'm at my best. And it does make the writing process a lot easier. So I can ask about the day-to-day. I know there's a way to drive. I didn't realize that until I did the research, but there are devices and there are ways that you can drive even if you can't use your legs. So there's a lot more utility than maybe that I would have thought about. But there are going to be certain hindrances or certain things, and even some small nuances, that they're important to put into the story. So I knew I was going to be kind of grinding a little bit, as I described, her going through her morning routine. I don't know exactly how that'll go. Mostly, I would expect it to be relatively normal, as other folks would do it, but there are going to be some hiccups. So that is part of it. I'm going to have to do a lot of research later on. I'm going to be talking to, I have some friends that are in law enforcement. I'm going to be talking to them about different techniques that can be used, viability, because my big thing is I want my story to be grounded in reality as much as possible. That it's a fantastic scenario, meaning it's something that is fantasy, like it's outside of, it's not based on true events, but that it could be to a degree. Now, obviously you have a little bit of narrative help, but I don't want there to be plot armor. I don't want there to be things that make this story, like this, stretch incredulity beyond the fact that it is a fictional story. And there are going to be certain elements that, of maybe luck or contrivance that, may come up. But anyway, that was just one big hurdle. And I know that was kind of restraining me, but it really wasn't that hard. You with the internet, it's so great. You can look up, parts of a wheelchair. You can look up, how do folks in a wheelchair do this? And you can usually find a lot of the answers. I like talking to people directly and getting their experience because, like I said, there is a unique perspective on it. It's not as mechanical. or as matter of fact, like this is what is done. It's like, oh, I do this, and then I like to do this, but then this is what really gets in the way. You get all that kind of stuff. And speaking of that, I am continuously frustrated by my mechanical writing. It's functional. It's like a screenplay in that it is telling you what you're seeing, but really trying to get my voice in there because it's going to be very important. And I have a feeling I'm finally going to hit that stride. I'm going to get to that point where the way I describe things, the way I talk, which usually I'm not going to say it's comical, and I'm not trying to make this comical, but I think in certain times, particularly where I'm writing now, the tone should be lighthearted. It should be a little fun. You should be getting to know this character. You should, hopefully you're liking her. You're tracking along with her day and with the other people that you're introduced to, because it is supposed to start very normal and very just, here are these people. I want them to be likable, and I want the read to be engaging, even though it is, as I said, starting out relatively mundane. I'm not describing anything mind-blowing, but hopefully it's engaging. So that's another thing that's rattling around in my brain. But I have decided to realize that I need to compartmentalize what I'm writing, or compartmentalize my role. Right now, I am Jesse the writer. There will be a time for Jesse the researcher, or Jesse the researcher has to jump in sometimes with Jesse the writer. Probably a lot of the bigger research is going to be done on its own. And it will be then incorporated by Jesse the writer. And then Jesse the editor, who goes back and looks at what Jesse the writer does and says, okay, this was flat. We need to spice it up. This is clunky. It's too wordy. Just basic things, and fix it up. And just knowing that there is, and again, it's not multiple personalities or multiple me's in my brain, but literally just going, that's going to be something for Jesse the editor to work through, or Jesse the researcher to deal with. It's Jesse the writer's job in this hour that I'm sitting down, or however long I'm willing to do it. It's my job to create that granite, that piece, that block, for the other ones to be able to add spice to, or to correct, or what have you, and not to be afraid of the correction. I know it's going to happen. I know I'm going to develop these characters. Oh, that's another thing too that I'm really not struggling with, because I haven't got there yet, but it's coming very quickly in the next few pages, where I need to start talking, I need to introduce the other characters. And here's the interesting thing. We are all the main character in our own lives. The way I relate to people or think about other people is in relation to me. They're my friend, my mother, my father, my coworker, my boss. Like they're defined by how they relate to me. And even if you have a theological worldview and you believe in God and you want him to be the center of your life, even if that's a goal, it's very, very difficult to sustain that and to do that on a daily basis. Some people are better at it than others. I struggle with it myself. So ideally you'd say, well, God is the center of my universe, but realistically, a lot of the times I end up being there. And not even in a selfish way, just in the way I think about my existence, the way I think about doing things. It is self-centered to a degree. And that's, I think, a danger that we can have when we're writing characters, is that we just think about who these characters are in relation to the main character, or the main characters to the main story. And to a degree that you need that, because otherwise you would just be fleshing out all this, you'd be doing this world building essentially, and you'd never get your story told, because all you're doing is talking about every little detail about every single character. We do need to refine and hone that, but we also need these characters to be justified in the story. They need to have growth. They need to have a perspective. They can't just be I need my main character to seem very caring, so I need them to have this conversation. And I fall into that trap a lot. I feel like I've fallen into that trap a lot in the past with my writing, with what I do, is I'm using this person as a sounding board. It's a way for this character, my main character, the character that I want people to care about, to voice their opinion about something, to reveal something about their character, for them to gives them an opportunity to say or do something that is, about them, or that advances the story. And that's not inherently wrong, but ideally, and I think necessarily, those characters they can't just be like, if you think about like a movie, the character, as soon as they move in frame, they exist. They're there for us to talk to. When they move off, they're gone. And we're not supposed to think that if they're not on screen, they're not doing anything, but that's the reality of it. If they're not on screen, the actors are not actually doing anything. The character has not been written to do anything. They're not actually literally doing anything outside of that frame. But if you do it right, the audience believes that they are, that, if they come in and they're breathing heavy, you believe that they were out there jogging. So there needs to be, the characters need to be whole. They need to exist outside of the pages of the story. So Crystal's father, for example, needs to have a well-rounded personality. What he says needs to reveal as much about him as a character as it does her. It needs to be back and forth. It needs, and like I said, I know that it needs to be done in a way that is moving the story forward, but I need to have a general sense of who he is, what he's about, and make him, at least temporarily for a moment as I'm writing, consider him as a main character, and he is a main character, but you know what I mean? It's that the conversation isn't just about her, it's also about him. It needs to be about him, even if it's advancing, her part of the story, because she is kind of the central character. The supporting characters need to be supported. And I'm sure this is fundamental. A lot of people are going, well, duh. But in my mind, I realized when I've thought about characters, or the fact that I haven't thought so much about the characters. And that's the danger of not doing a full, complete outline and doing all that stuff beforehand, is you're developing the character as you write. But that also means that you have initially, probably, I'm going to have rather shallow development at the beginning. And then once I really get some traction, really figure out who this character is, I'm probably gonna have to go back and boost it up a little bit. I'm gonna have to flavor that a little bit more. Go, you know what? He's really, this is his worldview. This is his philosophy. I realized as I'm writing this that this is actually who he is. And that being the case, when he had that interaction with her 5 chapters ago, he would have said this. He would not have backed down. He wouldn't have just shrugged. He would have actually pushed the point, because this is something that's very important to him, or that became important because of this event that happened. So that is part of it. But I think for me to have it be a living process like that is going to be better and is going to keep me more engaged. And I just need to get over this, whatever fear this, how do you have a fear? it has to be fear. It's irrational. A fear of having to go back and fix things. It's just mind blowing. And I know I've talked about that before, so I don't want to, beat that horse to death, or that point to death, or just beat it, or not even beat it. Let's just be kind to the point and just not bring it up too many times. Who cares? Anyway, the other part I want to talk about, and actually Denise, who is a fellow writer, actually asked me to mention this aspect as well, is music, and how music ties in with writing. Obviously, we know when we watch movies how profound of an impact music has on the scene we watch. You just by changing the music, if you don't know who the characters are, what their relationship is, depending on what music you put underneath of it, you can give the audience a certain impression. You can make a bad guy look like a good guy, and vice versa. Obviously there's going to be certain obvious scenes, but even, in the world we live in and in the stories that are told, you can even have somebody kill somebody else, and it can be the good guy, forced into doing it. There's many reasons why you would have your good guy or your protagonist having to do that. And of course you have your villains that would do the same thing. And it's really, the music can completely transform how you perceive that action. Film, books, I don't know if it's more so or equal to, but films are very manipulative. And I don't mean that in a negative way, although certainly that has negative connotations, but that means every line, every shot you're looking at. And I guess, it's exactly true in a book. It's there to make you feel something, see something a certain way. It is telling you a story. And some movies leave a little more ambiguity, both in their plot and in how they present characters. Maybe they purposely leave out music, or it's very benign. It doesn't really say one thing or another. It's just kind of there to kind of keep you in this world, but it doesn't necessarily have a value system to it. But most of the time, everything is purposefully, willfully done so that in this moment, you're tracking with it and you go, this is good, this is bad, this is sad, this is what's happening. And we don't process it that way, because that's a very digital, very binary way to process information. It should be more analog. It's more gradient. It flows in and out of itself. But we are supposed to be tracking with them, and everything that is done to converge and make a certain moment feel a certain way for us. And when you're writing a story for a book, a novel, you don't have music to help convey that, obviously. But we do use music to kind of get ourselves in the mood, or music that can kind of inspire us. And I'll say the beautiful thing, and it's simultaneously beautiful and tragic with music. Oh, I was also given a note that I need to slow down. So I know I'm talking very fast. This right now seems very slow for me. So You'll have to forgive me if I don't keep this pace for the rest of the video, but I do need to be mindful of speaking slower. When I get excited, I tend to speak very fast. I speak fast normally. I speak fast when I'm excited. And so anyway, I'm slowing it down. If it sounds ridiculous to you, that's why. It's because I'm slowing down purposely. But the beautiful and the tragic thing about music is that I call it a heart transplant, where a musician or a songwriter can convey what they're feeling, can convey their emotion in a very poignant way through music. And it's a way of saying, hey, here's what I'm feeling, here's what I'm going through. And you can kind of present it to somebody else in a way that you can't do with just the written word. The written word can compel and does compel emotion and can make you think. It can do a lot of things, but music is such a very definitive and poignant. Like you can just hear a song and you're like, oh, that's kind of sad, or oh, that really, oh man, that sounds so mournful, or oh, that's got me excited. In a way that you have to do a little more work on your end as a reader to get amped up or to be, to get sad. You really have to process it a certain way, and how your inner mind processes those words and the dialogue is going to impact that as well. If you don't hear them speaking with this, emotion, choked with emotion, that's why we have to use a lot of descriptive words to try to make sure that people get that sound in their head when people are talking, when the characters are talking. You can hear them being choked up. You can hear them being excited. That's part of our job. But in music, you don't have to do that. You don't have to explain the notes. The notes just explain themselves. So it's an amazing way to be able to communicate that, but we all process music differently. So a song that just resonates with somebody so much because of their own life experiences and how this particular story, hits them on a very intimate level, may not be the way it does for me. So while the capability is there of, putting this out, and like I said, I think there's different levels of music. There's some music where you're like, oh, that's definitely mournful. That's definitely somber. That's definitely exciting. That's definitely energetic. There's a lot of music that's kind of ambiguous where you do get a vibe from it, but somebody may say he's contemplating his dark past, but he's looking hopefully to the future. Or you go, no, he's just depressed and he probably wants to end it. And it can be very similar, that the music can be interpreted very similarly. And that's where you have to rely on what the character says or how they behave, what they do, what the context of the scene is. But so my point being, there are a lot of, some of the better music is a little ambiguous. Or I think that one of the biggest pieces that I remember from my childhood in music or score from my childhood was in the throne room in Return of the Jedi when Luke and Vader have their final clash. And has this very epic feel. It makes it feel like the entire fate of the galaxy itself is watching this moment, and that it has been built. And it is father, son, it is family, but it is light and dark. It's all these things. And it has this very epic feel, at least to me. And it's great when if you get on YouTube or you get into a chat somewhere and that is about a piece of music or a movie, and you hear other people say the exact same thing you're feeling. And again, that's the great thing about it. But the downside is not everybody has the same experience. Not everybody's going to feel the same way about a certain moment. They may go, oh yeah, that's a great piece of music, or oh yeah, that's really cool, but it's not gonna. You're like, no, do you really understand it? Do you get it? Did you imagine we feel this way? It's like, yeah, I kind of get it. You're like, but do you really get it? And they don't. And so it's a little sad because you're like, oh, but then you realize that there's other things that resonate with them that don't resonate with you, and so we all get our resonance. We all get our connection with different pieces of music. All that to say, there's going to be different music that get us hyped to write music. Some people listen to music while they write. I have the misfortune of really typically only listening to music when I'm driving, when I'm writing. If I'm walking, sometimes I'll have it. I don't typically listen to it while I'm writing. In fact, I've discovered that, I don't know, you may be the same way. If I'm driving to a place that I've never been before, even if I've got the GPS on, when I get closer, I'll turn down the music or turn it off. If it's like a bunch of, a series of several turns, it's almost like somehow I can't process the music and the directions and all this stuff, even though I've been doing it and I'm fully functional. I have a fully functional brain. For whatever reason, to me, if I turn it down, I'm able to understand the directions better. I don't know what it is. I don't know if that's just me or what. But when I'm writing, typically I don't have music playing. Even when I'm editing, a lot of times I won't have it there. Sometimes I'll have something in the background, but usually it's not really there. But I use music to get myself amped up. When I was drawing this picture, I really had 3 songs on loop that were playing over and over. And I'm not going to tell you exactly what they are. One of them was a cover of a very short score from Mega Man. Mega Man is a Nintendo game, and this was a Nintendo game. This is back 1987 or 1988 or something like that. 8-bit Nintendo. It was a cover, so it has, a fuller music, sound to it, but it was just the way it sounded. And I don't remember what came first, but I think when I heard that song, it made me think, like the concept that had been kind of wafting around suddenly became more tangible. It's suddenly the moments that were in my head, especially the moment that you're seeing there, it coalesced. It became, I don't know how else to put it. It fleshed it out. It was like, oh my gosh, like this is the embodiment of this moment. This is the emotion. This is everything. And when I listen to it, I'm like, but it's for a video game. But to me, I hear the energy. I hear the aggression. I hear the mournfulness. And anyway, I don't want to get into anything too specific, but I was just talking about that. But and Denise had suggested, hey, talk about the music that gets you in the mood for writing. And all that to say, I will listen to that song even now to get myself prepared for it, to get myself in that mindset. The problem is, it is for that particular moment. It doesn't really work for what I'm writing now. And sometimes it makes me impatient because I hear the dialogue, I see the scene in my head when I hear that music. I've even gotten teary-eyed over it, for crying out loud. But that's the end. The tendency or the tendency is to want to get to that point as quickly as possible, because to me, that's the gut punch. That's the part that really is going to hit. That's the beauty and the tragedy and all of that at the same time. But it doesn't work. It doesn't land. It doesn't do any of that if I haven't built the entire story up to that point. A joke only works. The punchline of a joke only works if you've prepped the joke, if there's enough context, if you set it up the right way. The greatest punchline can be completely butchered by a horrible setup, by a botched setup. How many times if you try to tell a joke and you're like, okay, so this guy and this girl walk into a bar and wait. Okay, so no, wait. They walk, well, he walks in first, okay? He walks in first, talks to the bartender, and then she comes in, wait, no, okay. And you finally get there, but by that point, and maybe you don't belabor it as much as I do, maybe you don't stumble as much as I did, but it's enough where if it's not smooth and it's not practiced and it's not polished, you might get somebody go, okay, yeah, that's pretty good. But you could have got a much better reaction if it was just straight out without having to backtrack and fill in things and being all over the place. And it's the same thing with the story. I know that last bit is not going to have the impact that it has for me unless I can put everything else that's been in my head and everything else that builds to that point down on paper. So all that being said, I think music impacts people in a different way and they use it in different ways. For me personally, there isn't music exactly that kind of gets me in the mood. The songs that I listen to heighten a moment, refresh a moment, and it motivates me to want to get to that moment. And I mean, like I said, the tendency is to want to rush to get to it. But because I know I'm in this is a marathon, not a sprint, it's like, okay, this is worth getting to. This is worth telling. This is worth incarnating. And so I want other people, I want as best as I can to give a heart transplant, to have people feel the way I do in this moment. I can do that as long as I set it up beforehand. And that is that's what motivates me, is I want to communicate something to an audience. I want something to resonate on an emotional level the way it has with me. And it's that desire that motivates me to keep writing. Or to start writing, even though, like I said, that music, I have to be very careful, because if I play that beforehand, I've got a certain energy in my head and a certain atmosphere, and it doesn't match the atmosphere that I have. And so remember when I said earlier that I'm trying to incorporate more of my voice in there and not make it so mechanical. Part of that is I'm grappling with what I know I'm leading towards, and the emotion that is going to entail and the kind of grittiness that will entail. But I'm writing something that should be more lighthearted. So it's a bit of a mess, is my point. It's a bit of a mess, but that's how I use music. And I will end with this. I also have had another small epiphany, or two actually. One is about what time of day I write, and the other is where I write. As for time of day, I am a morning person. But what I realized, at least as an older morning person, meaning over the age of 40, is that while my brain is working and I can get up and I can function as soon as I'm awake, essentially give me 10 seconds and I can be doing something functional. Functional doesn't mean peak of performance. And what I kind of ultimately realized is I need to do something first that gets my brain, gets the gears turning, kind of gets the motor warmed up, gets the engine warmed up before I go to write. Because I was just going, hey, let me get up, I'll do a quick little bit of exercise, some stretching, grab a shower, and I'll start writing. My brain is functional, but it is not at the level that it needs to be for telling a story. I'm not trying to say that it requires brilliance or genius, but you do have to be on your A game. If you really want to tell a good story, our minds have to be at optimal efficiency. And if they're not, then they have to be there for the editor. Editor Jesse is going to have to do a lot more work. And I do that a lot of times, especially now where I don't have a lot of stuff written. I'll start the session by reading over what I've written, and I'll go back and, oh my gosh, that was stupid, or oh geez, or there's got to be a better way to say that, or I left out this part. And so it's like a review process. It takes about 5 minutes or so right now that kind of gets me up to speed where I'm like, okay, I'm okay with it where it is now. Let me go ahead and jump into the next portion. But all of that to say that I can't remember what it's called, Einstein window or something like that. But ideally there is a time of day where we're at our optimal production level. We are at our best mentally, psychologically, whatever. And it's at a certain time during the day. I think mine is still earlier in the day, but it is not first thing in the morning, especially if that morning is 4:30 or 5, unless I jumpstart it, unless, like I make a lot of other YouTube videos, I will, get with video games and stuff. If I do an edit for one of those, that may be just enough to get me warmed up so that when I sit down, my brain is engaged. And I realize this because sometimes when I wake up, this is a bad habit to get into. Sorry, I just want to make sure I don't go over time, but I probably will a little bit. When I wake up, I have a bad habit right now that I'm trying to break of hopping onto like YouTube, checking out some content or whatever. And usually it's fine. A lot of the content is fine, but some of it, ends up being a little like, hey, what's going on in the world? I don't watch the news, but I will, I'll kind of touch base, or what's going on with entertainment or something. And it's out of morbid curiosity. I actually don't really give a fig. It's just more like, how bad is it getting? Or, hey, did anything good happen? I don't know. It's not healthy. I'll put it that way. But I realize because sometimes I'll post a comment. I won't do it. I won't get in arguments. I won't say anything that I think would inspire an argument or that is counter to somebody's point. But I'll just try to, something will inspire me and I'll try to write down a thought, a comment. And it's usually like, yeah, I've seen this too. And I think what it is, and blah, blah, blah. And when I read back over it, I'm like, oh my gosh, not only are there spelling errors, the kind where it's like, not that I don't know how to spell the word, but I wasn't processing like there, there, THERE and THIR. Like my brain is not quite connecting those dots the way it's supposed to. And the sentences are clunky. There's repetition, like I'm using the same word in two back-to-back sentences. And I'm not talking about like and the, but like, it's a continuous pattern. He continuously does this. It's like, well, no, that's redundant. I shouldn't be using that word. If I want to say he perpetuates this concept, that's fine. But for me, I don't like to see the same words, keywords in multiple sentences or even back-to-back sentences or even in the same paragraph, ideally. But I do that when I've just woken up, if I'm just getting my brain going. And so I look at that and go, okay, that's the level that my writing is when I'm trying to actually write this story or try to write anything at that time of day without having given my brain a proper jump start. And it's crap. And I don't mind if it's in a comment because who cares? It's very disposable. But I think part of my frustration has been, why do I suck? Why am I not able to put my thoughts together right? And it's because there's still kind of a fog. It feels like a fog, like right behind my eyes. it feels like there's a fog where I'm just not quite connecting the synapses. They're not quite firing the way they're supposed to. They're enough to get words on the page, but they're not really doing it in even a structurally sound way, let alone something that is bringing out my voice or my particular accent on the story. And finishing up, I know I'm a little over time, where I write. I have always, when I was in school, I did my homework on the floor. I was usually laying on my stomach, I had a pillow under my arm, and I had my book there. And usually my cat Tubby was sitting on or around some of the pages. Cats have this natural instinct of knowing what you're using and how important it is. And then they make sure they insert themselves there because they want to be the center of attention. Even if they don't want you to touch them or pet them or even look at them, they want to make sure that they are the center of your world. And so anyway, I usually had to fight her, kind of move her tail over or something so that I could actually do my writing. But I was always on the floor, or I'd be sitting cross-legged on the floor and, with my back leaned against the wall and with a laptop in my lap. In other words, I don't usually write at a desk. When I was younger, there were very few times I can recall doing that when I'm trying to do math or something, or if I'm drawing, I'll draw on a desk. Obviously, that's you have to do that. But when it comes to writing, or when it comes to doing something creative or fun, for whatever reason, how I work, it's usually on the floor, cross-legged or doing whatever. And even if there's a bed, I don't lay on the bed. I will lean up against the bed. I'm on the floor. I don't know why. That's kind of always been the way I do things. And so it was peculiar to me. I'm like, why did I create like this little nook where I'm sitting in a chair at a type of desk? Now I have, video game paraphernalia around, and I've made it kind of cozy. Got the old VCR next to the TV and everything. So it's a warm environment. It's an inviting environment, which is what I thought I wanted, but I am still sitting at a chair at a desk. And I have not tried this yet, but I think I'm going to try the next session. I'm going to try just sitting on the floor or sitting, I can use furniture, but again, cross-legged, like just for whatever reason, doing that, leaning back with it in my lap, it puts me in a certain mindset. So I'm going to try that next time and see if that yields a different result. I feel like this time was a little bit better. This is later in the day. It was 4 in the afternoon. 5 actually was when I started writing in the evening. But I didn't have work earlier in the day, so I didn't have a lot of, I wasn't worn down by the day. In fact, it took me a long time to get out of bed because I had a day off and I decided I wanted to slack off, which isn't a good thing, but whatever. I finally got out of bed and got my butt in gear and got it done. But it was a slow process. And so essentially I was waking up more or less fresh even at 5. So my next step is testing out, okay, if I wake up tomorrow, I do my little bit of workout or whatever, and then I do something to engage my brain for 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Maybe it is leaving a comment, although like I said, I think that's an unhealthy habit I need to get out of. Do something with my mind to get it warmed up and then try to write and do it on the floor, where I seem to be most comfortable doing it and see what happens there. So stay tuned for the results of that little experiment. But I think it is important. We can't overlook those two things. That was my point, really. That's me processing what works best for me. Those things are important. They seem very trite. And for some people, maybe it doesn't make a difference. Some people, maybe whether because they're gifted or just because of how they're wired, it doesn't matter where they write or how they write. They can do it anywhere, any which way. They could be upside down. They could be in a spaceship. They could be on a plane. I don't write very well on a plane. I don't focus or concentrate very well on a plane. I don't even watch movies very well on a plane. It's not a comfortable environment for me. I don't like it. Doesn't mean I physically can't do it. It's just not some place that I'd want to do it. But for, I think, a lot of us, we need to realize where we are the most productive. And it may not be. We could have everything set up perfectly. You could have this awesome desk that faces out into this great picturesque area, and you can see the sunrise, and you got all of the stuff around. You got your tea and this and that, and you're going, actually, I write better, at the dinner table, when I don't have a window to look out of, I don't know. It could be different for everybody, but I think there is an ideal location for like an ideal place where we can write, where we feel more comfortable. And there's a time of day. And sometimes that may conflict because we're working during our more productive time of the day. So it's like, okay, well, do I take like an hour lunch break? And I think for me, the solution, I need to make sure even if I say, okay, my optimal time is 2 p.m, and I really can't take that time. And even if I could, I can only take half an hour, but then I've already got work on the brain and I know I've got to get back to it. So I'm not really focused. before or after work, I've got to figure out which one is best. I don't think it's after work because my brain is usually mush after that point, and I'm usually tired. And I just don't want to be thinking about anything to do with typing or anything. But like I said, I'm a morning person, but I need to ease into the morning. I need to get to the place where I'm at optimal efficiency. And I think, and it's just, I think we can really get frustrated with ourselves and with the process more than we need to because we're not giving consideration to these things that do play a role in how productive we are, how easy it is for us to create. So that's my bit there. And I plan on writing tomorrow morning and the morning after that, and the morning after that. So hopefully these videos will be a little more frequent. Like I said, realistically, probably 1 or 2 a week. But I appreciate you waiting. Sorry for the long wait. Hopefully the next one will be sooner. But I'm working through this myself, and it is an uphill battle. And yeah, we'll just keep going. It's an uphill battle. You just keep fighting. Just keep moving uphill. Like a dung beetle rolling up. Okay, that's a crappy analogy. Talk to you later.